Hey, everybody. Hey, if you are tuning in at this time, you are listening to That Shift, a business podcast about entrepreneurship, small business ownership, and it's an unfiltered, unedited podcast. My name is Kenyana David, and I typically share this platform with friends and family, and sometimes just me, on topics that are talked about but needs to be unpacked a bit. So, for today, we're talking about burnout. And I've been wanting to talk about burnout and really deep dive into what it really looks like and how it kind of plays out and some of the things that come out of burnout. And we have been talking about this for years. I have experienced it several times. Friends who are in the entrepreneurial space have experienced it. But I feel like this particular episode is to really deep dive into when there's burnout, what that really means, who's all impacted, what's affected, and how to kind of mitigate the frustration. You can never really prepare for burnout. You can never really stop it when it's on the road. And you really unpopular opinion, you can't prevent it. You can't say I'm never going to burn out because I have all these self-care stuff things in place. Burnout at the baseline really comes down to a lot of different things. And this podcast is really to talk about that shift that is, if it's mentioned, it's kind of glossed over because, in my opinion, a lot of times when we talk about things in entrepreneurship that are arguably negative or they're not nice. We don't want to discourage anyone. We don't want to, um, put someone in a position of saying this isn't for me. And so we'll mention it. We'll give it an honorable mention that it's a thing, and we might even share some sort of story. But the it always kind of circles back to, but it's okay. It's you can work through it, and if you have good self-care practices in place, you don't have to worry about that. And I feel like that's that shift. I really do. I think it's not a real thing to go into entrepreneurship or to be in it and not acknowledge what it really is. It's not a 8 to 4, a 9 to 5, a day shift, night shift kind of thing, or swing shift. It is where you check the boxes. You have your assignments, your deliverables, and you check the boxes. Entrepreneurship is you got to create those boxes before you can check them. And sometimes that burnout happens after the boxes are created. Sometimes when the boxes are being created. And so the way it sometimes play out is during the process of checking the boxes. So it starts when the boxes are being created, and then it plays out when the boxes are being checked. And so it can just happen. It can happen so fast. And the one thing I forgot to mention is that this podcast is live. So if you are streaming it live on 716 Live, where the podcast is being produced, or on one of their Facebook, Instagram, X, YouTube, I can see you in real time in the comments. So let me know that you're here. Say hey. Let me love on you in real time. And if you have any questions or concerns, or you just want to share your experience or your raw thoughts, we don't have to agree on it, but I would love to hear it and have that conversation with you. So with that being said, Burnout is inevitable. We're going to all experience it. We're going to experience it at different times for different reasons. And we'll kind of go down the line as far as signs and symptoms and, how it plays out. And, what really causes it, because it doesn't mean that you are a good or bad entrepreneur or business owner, or that you don't have your shift together. It doesn't mean that. It means that you are in a headspace of chaos to some extent. And it has played out for me, several times. Definitely several times. The most recent was in October. October was a really rough month. And leading up to it, it was kind of like London Bridge was coming down in the months leading up to. I had planned a conference. At the same time, we're moving into another quarter. We're thinking about end of year. I was thinking about November, because November is Small Business Saturday, Cyber Monday, Giving Tuesday. It was a lot going on. And then outside of that, I still had responsibilities that tie into. So a lot of times, and I think it deserves an honorable mention, a lot of our stuff is lined up together, right? We're always in mixed company. So you can be in an organization and some of the folks in your organization are clients or potential clients or constituents to whatever you got going on. So for me, that looks like different roles that I play on boards. I have to still show up. I still have to show up. It is not an excuse that I have to work when it comes to my role as president of the NBA or the National Black NBA, the Western New York chapter, or I play a role, or not play a role, but I'm in a role of one of the VPs for Girl Scouts of Western New York. We're all working. And if I am expecting folks to acknowledge that even though I own my own business, it is still my career, and for them to put some respect on it and acknowledge that this is my work and not, devalue it or dilute it or minimize it to my hustle. I have to stay in that space of that we're all working, right? No one's work is more or less important. So when it comes to that, I still have to show up. And I still have responsibilities. I still have meetings to go to. I still have deliverables. I still have to do the things. And at that time, it was a bit of a panic for my sorority. They, the beginning of the year is September. So September, October, and then for the National Black NBA, we had our conference. So the conference last year was in Philly. So with conference, I'm gone for a week. I'm disconnected for a week relative to things that are happening local. So there's that. I was also working on a different project, and it was chaotic for me. All of it. There were just too many decisions that had to be made that I either had to make, maybe, in my business, or I had to contribute to the final outcome, say within organizations. And then right around that time, I had applied, in the summer, I had applied for the OSHI Leaders of Color program. And it's a really competitive program to get into. There, the last count I heard, it was between 200 and 300 leaders in Buffalo who had applied, and they were choosing 24. So the first time I did not, I came up as a an alternate, and so I'm thinking, what are the chances? If I get into this program, hands down, I'm going, and I'm thinking everyone is thinking the same way. But someone did have to pull out, and so they offered me the opportunity, which meant that there was going to be a week long retreat in Beaver Hollow. And that was the week of conference. That was the week of my conference. So now I'm really, really stressed out. I mean, really stressed out, preparing to go away and take this opportunity. And I had committed to taking this opportunity no matter what it looked like, because I was in this space of, and I believe it, when things don't work out the first time, there's always an opportunity for you to make a different decision the second time. So for me, that looked like in college, I wanted to be an RA, and I applied, and I thought that I was a good candidate. I was really stoked about the fact that I was going to be an RA. Well, I didn't get first round, and I was given the opportunity to be an alternate. And my attitude at the time was absolutely not. Nope, I will not be second best. You will not do that to me. I'm either good enough or I'm not. And I declined, not even respectfully, I declined. And within maybe a month or two, the RA that they chose, or an RA that they chose, had to leave, and she left campus, and so that position would have been available to me. So I always committed. And mind you, at that time I'm like 19 or so, and I said, if that ever happens again, where I am an alternate, meaning I'm still good enough, however, they're gonna keep me in mind, and they think that I'm a good fit, and if an opportunity opens up again, you are the next person up. And it could have been for any reason. So I had committed already, excuse me, that if that ever happened again, I will be enthusiastic about it and I will accept it. So when it happened in October, this happened, I was told in September that this would be in October. And I was like, absolutely. And so when they sent the notification that I had been put into this program, that became an added stress, because I was going to be gone for a week. And not only was I going to be gone for a week, the conference was that week. And, excuse me, with doing any kind of big project, the week of is always, putting out fires every day. And I had a series of speakers that I had chosen, and one had a death in the family. Well, no, three had a death in the family, but one had to travel for it. And, the level of communication when there's an emergency is always, wonky. There are some that this is what's happening. I need to communicate. I want to tell you what's going on, and just want you to be aware. And then you have the folks that, in an emergency, it's literally like, I can't do this. So I was getting all kinds of communication, and, you have things already paid for, the DJ, a deposit had already been made, the food. It was a lot going on, and a lot of this was playing out in real time, like when I was at the retreat. So now I'm freaking out. I am just freaking out. All kinds of things are happening. A role that I was in, there was a lot of stuff going on with that on the back end. It was a lot. And I pretty much cried the entire retreat, in different pockets of time. But every day there was, it was a lot. It was a lot. And I was breaking down. I was really breaking down. And I have friends that I was reaching out to, but mind you, I'm not even in Buffalo when this is happening. And so it wasn't like those I loved could love on me. I couldn't get those hugs. Now, in the retreat, um, there was some folks in my cohort that, I knew personally and I knew well. And they were as supportive as they could be. Excuse me. And I say that because the way the retreat was set up, so the Leaders of Color pulls leaders in different capacities, different leaders of color in Buffalo that are doing boots on the ground work. And they are in different fields. So you have a person that is a decision maker in the Homeless Alliance. There was most of them are, if not all, are in a nonprofit space, but they are in decision making roles. So you have director of, you have CEO of, you have these kind of roles. Excuse me. And everyone was dealing with their own shift, right? They had come there for some reason or another. And so I was there on behalf of the National Black MBA, particularly the Western New York chapter. And my focus was really on that and my reason for being in the program. And I needed support. I needed resources for the organization that would be turning 40 this year. And some of the real life things that were happening in the chapter, in Western New York, in the nation, relative to the value of MBAs, that has shifted since the organization was started, since the chapter was started. Also, COVID shifted a lot of things. There was some support that I was seeking for how much of a stretch the chapter is. So it's Niagara Falls to Syracuse Corning area, which is a good 3 to 3.5 hour stretch. So there was concerns of things I needed to focus on, and these type of things that I was focused on, other organizations were focused on as well, on how to lead, how to make decisions that was or are impacting the Black and Brown community or the folks of color in the community. So everybody was dealing with some major shift, right? It wasn't, we were there to hang out or that we were there, for some, broad, high level kind of reason. We were there, and the work that was being done was pulling. It was requiring us to be very vulnerable and to be very open to our strengths, our areas of opportunity, how we are and how we could be and how we should be leaders. So there was a lot of energy. There was a lot of crying. There was a lot of crying. And a lot of the leaders, are leading in different areas. And as far as roles within work or their responsibilities, but they're also leaders in other areas. So this was all just kind of, everyone is just really unpacking all of their shift, right? Everything. If they are having some challenges leading in their household, you had those conversations. One of my favorite questions, and it kind of put me in a headspace to really understand what my burnout really meant. One of the questions was, how do you lie? And, when you first hear the question, it's like, lie about what? you know. Um, but the question was really about, what are you telling all of your constituents that's not true, and when? So that looks like saying, I'm okay, or I'm all right, or I don't need anything, when in all actuality, you're not all right, you're not okay, and you need help. And so that question, there were some opportunities to share out and say your truth. And that's where, you get a lot of perspective on, what you're doing. And at that time, I was lying. I was saying I got it. And I had a lot of folks around me that believed me, which made it worse, right? It just made it worse because I had friends and family too that was really proud of the fact that I was taking on this project of doing a conference. While it seemed like a wild idea, they were really supportive of that. And because of that, if I said I was okay, I think they wanted to believe that I was okay. I think they had concerns because it was such a big project and there was so many variables to its success. And it required me to show up in so many ways, physically, emotionally, financially. It was a lot, but those who were sharing space with me wanted me to do it. They wanted me to do it because I wanted to do it. And so they didn't always address their concerns. And so when I was telling those lies, they were like, okay, just let me know if you need anything. So not only, this week, all these things are happening, and they were happening back to back to back to back. I was getting emails with, this fire is happening. Can you put it out? I was getting phone calls and text messages. And at the same time, I'm in these workshops where they're asking me to unpack how I really, really feel. So it was all just a mess. And I broke down. I broke down and I broke down. Well, I broke down every day. Let's just call a thing a thing. But I was breaking down in general, and you can see it. Oh, you can see it. And one of the facilitators, she took a picture of me. She took a picture of me. I must have been going through it because that picture looked like what I was going through. And I had asked at one point, maybe Wednesday, midway through, I went to her and I was like, I need help. Like I don't even know what to do. I don't even know how to make these decisions. And I wanted to cancel. I wanted to cancel the conference. But I felt like at that point, monies had been paid to the DJ, for food, for all these things to happen. Folks had bought tickets. It was like, I can't cancel. And it's so funny. In my head, I'm thinking there was one part of my mind that was like, you can't do that. Who does that? Have a little couth. You can't just do that. And another part of my, of my mind is like, how many concerts different folks like Janet Jackson have canceled, where there's so many people. And so I went to her and I was telling her what was going on one side of my mind, what was going on the other side. And I was like, I just can't figure it out. I have my reputation to think about. I have my reputation when it comes to folks that purchase tickets, but then also working with other people and what that look like. And will I break trust? And will they no longer like me in a set of how they would want to work with me, if at all? do I look unhinged? Do I look like I don't know what I'm doing? I was concerned about a lot of things. And so she said, "What do you want to do? Like, just what do you want to do?" And I said, "I really want to cancel." And I canceled. I canceled, and that was that. Um, but with canceling, now mind you, we're still at this retreat. Things are still happening. We're still unpacking things. There was a sense of relief, for sure. There was a relief, but then it was also like, it's still all this stuff going on. So yeah, I canceled the conference, but now I have to, send those emails to everybody about everything. And then I have to really gauge how transparent I want to be as to why I'm canceling. That's a thing for me. I want folks to know enough that they can determine if they ever want to work with me. I don't want to be like, it's canceled. I explained why it was canceled. And that was, a lot of different emails. There was a few phone calls. And some of the folks that were involved were also business owners, small business owners, actually almost all of them. And so with that was stressful because I have a business. And when I book something or schedule something or agree to something, I am looking at the bottom line of it. This is going to bring in X number of revenue. I set my goals and my objectives for the outcome of that, whether it's to connect, network, cast a net wide, whatever. And so to tell folks that it's not happening. And then I had some partnerships and collaborations in place. It was a lot. It was a lot. It was very embarrassing, which led to even more to the burnout because I'm like, I'm tired. I'm spent. I am emotionally drained. I'm done. And so I did that part, but I still had to focus on everything else. So October is a big month. For one, it's Women's Small Business Month. So there's already stuff going on in the academy. It was just a lot of stuff, right? It's just a lot of stuff. And I was assigned an accountability partner, and we were talking about something, and I was like, I need a break. I need a break. And he said, take a break. And I said, I don't think you nor I understand what that's going to look like. And he said, we'll figure it out. And so I committed to taking the rest of the year off. The best decision and the worst decision ever. The burnout had become so bad that I was done. And I was done not a weekend, not a week, not 2 weeks, but 2.5 months. So the good part of it was that I had the capacity to do it. And I will always be grateful that I had the capacity to do it. What I did not have is the foresight of what a burnout really plays out to look like when you're well again, when you're in your right mind, when you are ready to get back to work, to reconnect. I'm thinking it was about me. It was always about me and my well-being and what I needed. And that was not really true. So during that time, I have end of month, end of year things that I have to do. And because I took it to the end of the year, now mind you, usually end of year stuff, say like the renewal of contracts, the outreach for new opportunities, things that are paid annually revisiting when those, when those dates are due. Are they due in December? Or are they due in January? Well, because I was on a brain break, I did none of those things. None of those things. And so I lost a major contract. I mean, a major contract fell through the cracks. And that created some upset that I didn't even know I had. I'm thinking I'm going to get back to work and I'm going to be great. But when I got back to work, I realized now I have a lump sum of money that's missing and there's nothing I can do about it. Absolutely nothing. I'd missed the deadline to renew, and it was out there and open to the public now. So that was a shift moment for sure. Some of the other things that I do at the end of the year, like make all of my plans for the new year. So again, October, November, all these things are really happening. December, it's already laid out. It's just ready, waiting to be put into action, right? It's ready to go, but waiting to be put into action. And so I usually, brainstorm and mind map and look at my analytics and look at what worked and what didn't work and when I did it. And, I do a whole session of just seeing what's happening. So it's actually it's more of a series of sessions of working on my business as opposed to in it. And so I didn't do that. And when I did get back to work, when I did, commit to, just jumping into the deep end, I damn near drowned. Like it was bad. I was working with less revenue. I'd missed some major deadlines. A couple of things that are renewed at the end of the year were not. So, getting back into, figuring out what I'm going to do. I had no plan. And, yesterday's home runs don't win today's games. So looking at what I was doing at the top of 2023 and saying, oh, I'm just going to do that, did not work. It didn't make sense. And I don't know why I thought that it would. But, it was a thing. And January, so now we're at the bottom of February. January and half of February was a mess. It was a mess on paper. It was a mess in real life because I didn't have a plan. Things were just going. And there was some shifting that was done in 2023 in my business. Like, for example, the academy, the FEM Academy, was female entrepreneurs and small business owners. And at the top of 2023, it was a lot of shifting from female, entrepreneurs and small business owners to just being entrepreneurs and small business owners. Now, while that sounds very minute, it was a lot of shifting in the language. It was shifting in the marketing and the communication of the academy, because the academy became single gender, meaning anyone can take classes and be a part of the academy. And I can, when I want to, still have a hey girl, hey, with some of the classes that are, for that gender, but they are helpful to everyone. So with that, and if that sounds a bit wonky or confusing, it is essentially like Boy Scout. So Boy Scout was Boy Scout, but girls can join now. And so a lot of the opportunities are single gender. They can still, have some language that might be um, leaning to boys, but girls can be a part of it and still get the same value. And so the academy went in that direction, and that was important to really line it up and making sure that moving forward that I can still keep things that were in place, from trademarks to copyrights, and stay within a comfortable space with the legal stuff, right? With the implementation of things like that in 2023, they had to play out in 2024. There had to be a very specific plan of action, and going back and seeing what needed to be amended, like the student handbook or the visitor guide. I didn't do those things. So while the world could wait and everyone would ultimately be all right, it was hard getting back into that space and then trying to avoid being overwhelmed and going into burnout again. So trying to mitigate the frustration, mitigate the overwhelm with what was happening from a result of a burnout that already happened, right? So now it was a wild month and a half, and I don't even know if I'm really fully out of it, to be honest with you. I think there was so many things now that I think about, which is really the reason for this conversation now, is what did it look like when it was happening? What were the signs that I was going into a burnout, a major burnout? Now I've had, little small burnouts where I just need a couple of days to get myself together. I need to just disconnect and disengage and just be alone. I've had those, and I have those, every now and again. But to take off 2.5 months without any preparation was wild, arguably irresponsible. But given the circumstances, I don't think it would have played out any other way at all. But, with that, there were signs with what could have played out, the increase of responsibility and my schedule changing. So my schedule pretty much stays the same. And I had a really dope conversation with someone yesterday about our day, what our day looks like. And I was saying, I wake up at 3:50, I have some coffee, I meditate, I kind of get into what I'm going to work on. And then I typically would get my girls together, take them to school. I'd get back into work. And then this will go into about 2. And then there's a brain break. I go and, kind of figure out life with my girls. And then, I may start the second leg of meetings or organization stuff, and then, put schoolwork in there somewhere. Then my day is pretty much over by 9 or 10 o'clock. So for me now, being very mindful of my typical day, when I have to go to bed much later, or I'm not sleeping well enough that I can get up at 3:50, there's a problem, right? There's a problem. I might not notice it, but energetically there's a problem. If there are too many decisions that need to be made, leads to burnout. Like anyone else, I don't want to make a mistake. I particularly don't want to make a simple mistake, like just not being present type of mistake. And when there is no time that I can set aside to really think things through, or if there's a decision, say, for example, Girl Scouts. Girl Scouts right now for Western New York is looking for a new CEO. And there are some emails that are shared, some resumes and other kind of things with the folks who are applying. If there is no time for me to sit down and look at everybody's stuff and make a good or the best decision that I can make based on what I know, it's going to lead to some stress, right? I learned a lot about myself when it comes to hiring. So initially, you know, I'm thinking I needed to hire. But I was thinking I needed to hire because I needed help. The truth of the matter is, for my business, and this is for a whole nother episode, and we're going to get into all that too, there. What do you really need? What are you hiring for? I don't need to hire for the talent of the work. But what I did learn at that time, there was a contract that I signed relative to the conference. And based on the contract and me having to cancel, there were some nuances to the contract. And when it all played out, we had two different understandings of something in the contract, right? And for that reason, there was a lot of back and forth. And that was stressing me out, like completely out. And so I reached out to my attorney, and they ultimately took on the communication of that. So here's the thing with that. That's when I learned I need to hire to protect my energy. I needed someone to stand in and say, you focus on this stuff, I'll focus on this, and I'll report back. And then you can just make one decision or two, as opposed to every phone call is a series of decisions that you need to make in real time. That's not something that you can handle energetically. It's not your jam. And so for that reason, that's something that I'm mindful of when it comes to where I need help, and hiring makes it a lot easier. Hiring folks to do the stuff that I just don't want to do, that I don't have the capacity to do. And it's not the actual work. It's not the curriculum stuff. It's the things that pull me out of my element or positive headspace relative to my work. And so when I'm feeling really stressed and I'm thinking about all the people that can do this, who love doing this stuff, that's when I know I'm going into a burnout of sorts. Like now I'm burning, the candle on both ends. Like I'm trying to do damage control. That means there's damage, right? That could potentially happen, which is for me a burnout. And so those signs are important. I was telling a friend of mine recently, so I like organization. I like things to be in a place, so I'm always cleaning my house or my apartment. And so, the joke is, if someone asks me, am I okay? And they don't believe me, they come to my house or my apartment. And if they come and things are all over the place, I am not okay. That is how really close friends know if I'm not good. You know, if there are dishes in the sink, if there's, chaos, they know something's not right. And I've learned to acknowledge that myself. If my apartment is in disarray, mentally I'm in disarray. And so those are signs for me, and those are symptoms for me. And, for you, those who are tuned in, see what that looks like for you. What is your norm? Do you do things at a certain time, or do you do things a certain way, or you do certain things altogether? If you are aware of those things, you'll know when you're out of sorts, right? You'll know when things have gotten really wild for you mentally, and you can kind of jump in and do something different. You can't really avoid burnout, but it doesn't have to look like mine, where it was 2.5 months and it was creating its own upset. So, there are different causes for burnout. When we really think about entrepreneurship, our role within a small business, there's a lot of causes of burnout. It could be decisions. You have folks that depend on your success, depend on you. That is stressful. If you have employees, this is their livelihood, right? They're depending on you bringing in X number of revenue so that you can pay them, and that you can continue to pay them, perhaps increase their income because you are bringing in more revenue. So you have that. Some decisions impact the community. The wrong decision might not cancel something, but it might delay something. So you have that. You have risks of that. Who's all going to be affected, impacted, for how long, how bad can it be? If you have, you're creating a product line or a service line, you're thinking about the risk of the investment, the investment of maybe money. You might lose it. You could lose it. You may lose it. The investment of time. We can't get any of that back. That's one thing we cannot get back, and we can't get more of. So we're thinking about that risk. Alongside, risks, when it comes to the causes of, we're thinking about our lives, our everyday real life stuff. We have personal relationships, romantic or platonic or family. We're dealing with that kind of stuff. And we're dealing with, depending on what you do, what your life looks like, some politics really affect your everyday as well. We are in an election year, so there are things that we have to be mindful of at all times. And we all do. We're human. We all have things that we have to think about. But when you are making decisions, you are creating boxes to check, and the pressure. Sometimes, I think it's the pressure of what you're doing. If you leave a box out, it doesn't get checked, right? And so the pressure, the expectation of yourself, your expectation of others, or others having an expectation of you, and managing those expectations. We all want to be great. We all want to be successful, however we are defining success. And we all, once we know and understand who we need to be to get this thing done or to be successful, that can be a lot, especially if you're not yet that person. And it doesn't have to be anything major. You don't have to use your imagination with this one, but it could just be, in order for me to check all the boxes, I need to get up earlier, or I need to work on the weekends, or I need to work during the time that I would be watching my favorite show. If you're not there yet, it can create some stress and some pressure. And while you know what you need to do and what is necessary, it creates its own dynamic. And, you're not sleeping, you're not eating enough, if at all, or you're eating poorly. That's usually a sign as well. It's just, I forget to eat. And it is the worst decision, because now I'm low energy, I'm hangry, all these other things, and now I'm not even in the headspace to be successful. So with burnout, while I don't believe that you can avoid it, I think you can mitigate the frustration of it, and you can prepare for it. Having a plan. I know it sounds crazy, but having a burnout plan. A burnout plan could look like, if I need to take a couple days back, what do I have coming up in the pipeline? What do I have in the archive that I can just cycle back? Whether that's marketing stuff, whether that's things that you are doing in real time, like live streaming, or things like a podcast. What do you have going on? And if you are down, what can you do? Who can jump in for you? Can some things go by without being done? If you do something every day at 4:00, how indispensable is that task? Like, do you have to do it? And if you don't have to do it, how long can you not do it? How are you going to take care of yourself in the burnout? During the burnout, I just disconnected. I was just going about the day. I wasn't intentional or deliberate about getting better, because I was spent. I was over it. So now, moving forward, what am I going to do to just love on myself? Am I going to travel? Am I going to read a book or 5? Am I going to, watch some TV or a movie, or get into a series? Like, what am I going to do to expedite this process? I'm going to go through it. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. But what am I going to do to make sure it doesn't last too long? So coming up with some sort of plan, some sort of system of sorts for when you are in a burnout, and then also, what it looks like before and after. So having something to lean on, and it'll be like any other contingency plan. What'll happen if you're not well? If you and that's an episode of in and of itself as well. Entrepreneurs having a contingency plan relative to health. So now this conversation is your mental health, but what happens if something happens to you physically? What are you doing? What is the plan? And so burnout has to be a plan. It has to be something that now how it will play out. Will you do all the things that you put in your plan? Probably not. It'll be like any other, a fire evacuation plan. Yeah, there's some steps that are, ideal, but when it's happening in real time, everyone's going out any exit that they can get out of is not always the one that they practice. So it's the same thing with the burnout. You'll have some things in place, some things to think about. And once you know the plan, share that plan with an accountability partner, with a mentor, with an advisor, with your coach, with your consultant if you have one, so that one, you can be on the same, someone else is on the same page, right? You're not going through this and no one knows it's happening. They can start to look for things like when my apartment isn't clean, when it's things aren't in order, is really reflective of things are not in order with me. And so friends, family, those that you're connected to can say, you might not see it, but I see it. And this looks a little wild or a little weird or a little wonky. Like, I think we should have a conversation. So it's something to think about, because I have, watched some YouTube videos and read some stuff on Google about burnout. And, they talk about the causes, they talk about some of the signs, but nobody really talks about what happens when you are really done and what can happen. Because you'll be well mentally, but your business is not well. Like, my things that were happening in my business, it wasn't the healthiest it's ever been. And it's because I wasn't well enough to take care of it. And so now it's better, but for some time it was unwell. Even though I was well, it was unwell. So, thinking about, again, your business as its own separate thing, its own entity, its own person, if that makes sense. So with that, let me know your thoughts. You can always add them to the comments, and I'll circle back. And I would love to know what you think about that and what made sense, what did not make any sense at all. And yeah, so I'm going to bid you a good day. This podcast is a Monday through Friday, top of the morning, well, 8:30. For some, that's top of the morning. And I'll talk to you tomorrow.